Hello, everyone. It's Darshana Avila, somatic sex and intimacy coach, and I am coming to you from the ninth day of Power to the P, month of February, mindful masturbation. And I am coming to you actually right now from a hotel that I am at a conference retreat type intensive for the next 3 days. And it's a different flow and mindset and rhythm and physical and energetic space than I am used to spending my days in. So it's an interesting moment to just have shifted from that for a few minutes, snuck up to my room to be able to record a few minutes of a download to you about the practice that I did manage to get in before I left the house early this morning to make my way here. And so today was the first day that I woke up feeling better than I did the day before, since I had had that cold. And I was really glad to feel my energy returning, my vitality returning, and was curious about whether or not my arousal was going to return, because for the last couple of days, I just have not felt like moving in that direction very much at all. And I also had some time constraints to deal with, and yet felt committed to making space to practice. And so sat down at my altar, as I often do in the morning before I'm involved in my self-pleasuring. And I do a ritual each day to the divine feminine, and really just connecting to the elements. And it's a very devotional honoring. And it often is an erotic experience for me, in so much as connecting to that pulse of aliveness that I hold erotic energy as. And so I did get curious this morning. What would happen if I was stimulating myself in some way during my ritual? And so I sat cross-legged, as I always do, and I put my favorite vibrator right between like the heel of my foot that was pressed up against like my pubic bone. And I stuck my vibrator there so that it would be held right in place, kind of against my clit, but also just more generally focused than that, against the outer labia, and just sending the vibration all the way through. And kept it on the lowest setting, so very, very gentle. And I went about my puja, and I chanted my mantras and did all the things that I do each morning as a part of this ritual, and got to have this fantastic experience of being in a state that for me is usually very relaxed. I do particular breathing exercises, taking just a lot of deep and slow breath very often. And so keeping my parasympathetic nervous system online and maintaining this level of relaxation throughout my system, while also being aware of this continuous and pretty subtle stimulation right in my genitals. And it was delicious. I really enjoyed it, and just would get, little sparks and tingles of more aroused, as opposed to just sensuous energy moving through my body. And when I completed, I definitely had the highest level of turn on in my system that I've had over the last few days. And so I sat with that and just witnessed what was going on. And I also witnessed my thoughts around it, because I have said to myself that during this month of practice, I really wanted to steer clear of my long established, like habituated porn vibrator kind of combo for a quick orgasmic release, for that peak orgasmic experience, and go into different, more subtle realms and experience pleasure and intensity in different ways. And yet here I was already with this turn on, and aware that time was short and my vibrator was already engaged. And so I said, well, what if I just enjoy my vibrator? No porn, which normally those two go together like 99.5% of the time for me. It's rare that there's one without the other. So I laid down and committed to staying a lot on my sensate focus, meaning my attention was on body sensations and breath. I was scanning for where there was tension, where there was relaxation, what happened as arousal moved through me, as opposed to my attention going onto a screen and largely disassociating from much of what was happening in my body. And it was so fantastic for me to witness, like, where, like, around my rib cage and my diaphragm, my solar plexus, like, I would notice a lot of holding and tightening there when I would go toward higher levels of arousal, and then to consciously breathe into that and bring it back down. Feeling like pulsation in my asshole and all around my pelvic area and my genitals, and really, like, to just attune to the more subtle layers of feeling underneath that I don't often pay attention to if my attention is focused on whatever's on the screen. So it was an interesting way for me to practice, to stay in that reverential space that I had cultivated through my ritual, to bring in the element of a vibrator. I kept it on pretty low settings, and just did a very gradual build. But I did end up toward the end, my mind wandered into a little bit of fantasy, and I replayed some scenes from, like, the last time I watched porn. I was very clear in the video that I watched, and it was definitely tapping into some core erotic themes for me. It brought in, like, voyeurism, exhibitionism, and, like, really, like, deep penetration, slow, profound connection, and things that really turn me on. So I let my brain go to that for a little bit, and then I started having some visuals of a current lover, and I just let it happen. And it ended up being a really powerful and sweet clitoral orgasm. And I enjoyed it straight up. And yesterday, given the fact that I was inside of that inquiry of to come or not to come, today I decided to come, and it was yummy, and it felt like a good way to lead into these few days that I'm now inside of, focusing more on things around my business than around the sexuality piece per se, although the two go hand in hand for me. So it'll be an interesting report tomorrow. I'm sharing a room during this retreat with a friend and colleague of mine, and I'm going to see if I can maybe bring her into this practice a little bit. So you might be hearing from a special guest, maybe not. We're going to see how that flows. And I hope you're enjoying your journey, for those of you who are following along, and that you're learning new things about yourself and about your pleasure. Let me hear from you if there is anything you'd like to ask about or comment on. And I will be back tomorrow with another installment from Power to the P. Be well.